Welcome to the Yellow Rose Noteboard. This is my first Yellow Rose project, and we've had this. What's really interesting about this project is painting a yellow rose is really very different than painting any other color rose, and it's because of the transparent qualities of the yellow paint. So in this video I show you how to manage the yellow paint so that you can successfully base coat. Another thing that we've done with this is painted as a chalkboard, to be a chalkboard, and whoops, it's painted as with magnetic paint, so it's actually a magnet board as well, and I show you how to do that as well. And the magnet sticks. So this fun little project, I hope that you enjoy it. Alright, we're going to paint on an Anyway tray surface. This is the MDF version that is slightly thicker. There's a really skinny I'm trying to think of what the name of the wood is. I can't think of it. Anyway, there's a really skinny version, there's this middle version, and then there's a plywood version. The plywood one has always been a little heavy for me, so I was really happy when we decided to get these made in this MDF panel. Today we're going to paint the Anyway tray. By the way, let's introduce this puppy. The Anyway tray is a tray that you can put an insert in, and then you can change it for whatever season you want. So you can have a Christmas insert, and now it's your Christmas serving tray. For any of the holidays and important occasions, you could do a beach scene and have totally go beachy and stuff. So I love that. I love changeable things. And then these, if you paint on the thinner one, it can be a placemat. It's the perfect size. It fits a good sized dinner plate, cup, stuff. So there's a lot of uses for these. Today what we're actually going to do is turn this way, and we're going to make this a chalkboard that is magnetic. There's new paint out called magnetic paint, and so we are going to make this magnetic, and I love it. Okay, so the very first thing you got to do is get your jar open, and this is the dried crumblies. We want to make sure that we scrape those off so that they don't end up chunking up your paint. Okay. So this kind of has a little separation anxiety going on here, so we have to stir it. We're going to use the back of our paintbrush and make sure that we're all nice and stirred up. This bottle is super duper heavy because it's got metal particles in there. And I'll show you my example. This is my example I did on a little coaster wood, so here's my magnets. It's not the strongest. You wouldn't be able to hold like a corsage on there, but you can definitely do all your notes and things like that. It stays on, no problem. So this is just 3 coats, and I did 3 thin coats to test it. We test everything here at Creative Arts Lifestyle to make sure that they work the way that they're supposed to. It can be the best idea in the world, but if it doesn't actually perform, then I don't want to have anything to do with it. Okay, so we've got that nice and stirred up. I'll scrape that off, and I'll use my brush. I really don't want to use a brush though, do I? I think I want to use a heavy sponge. Let's wipe that off on there so we don't waste it. That's how much I used doing the 3 coats on my little coaster trial. So it seems to go a far ways. And I did brush this on, and pardon the spatters, but it did not leave any ridges, even though it's a very thick product. I'm going to don my nitrile gloves because I don't want my hands to be magnetic. Okay, so even though my sponge will keep my hand out, I'm going to go ahead. These are chemical-free gloves, or they're chemical-proof gloves. And what that means for you, they're also they're not latex. I have a latex allergy. So, but these, if you use them in stain, the fingertips won't fall off. Okay, I'm going to get my mushroom sponge. Okay, this is a sponge that's spongy on both sides. Okay, and we're just going to dump some of this out. I don't want to dump out too much because I have to dry. It takes a goodly amount of time to dry. And I guess I could force it dry, but I've got other things I want to be doing while I'm waiting. So we'll go over here. I'm using this mushroom sponge because of its dense. It's super duper, like I'm pushing on it and you can see it's not really denting in. I can push really hard and dent it, but this means I can move my paint around. It's going to allow me to do what I want it to do, and it's going to be super smooth application for a super smooth chalkboard surface. And what you do is you apply this over the top, and then you paint on top of it. So we're going to put our black coat over the top. Okay, let's talk about chalkboard paint for a second. There's a lot of hubbub going on Pinterest and all of that kind of stuff about how to make your own and stuff. I've had tremendous luck just using regular paint as my chalkboard surface. If you want to add a little tooth, you can put a little bit of drywall plaster in your paint, and that adds just a little bit more bumps. But I've always just used straight black and never had a problem. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm on my nonstick mat, so it keeps my messes contained. By the time, actually this is drying very nicely, by the time I get to the other side, my paint is almost dry. And I use just about the right amount of paint. These dense sponges don't contain a whole lot of, it doesn't suck up the paint very much, so you can see like it's just on the area that I have used it. So, and if you're going to lay this out, you want to make sure you put it in a baggie if you're waiting for stuff to dry. I'm going to go ahead and get my other two coats. You let it dry completely and apply your coats. You don't want to do any chalking on it before, I think it says something like 24 hours. Always read your labels. Let dry completely 24 hours and then top coat after that with the color of choice. To make sure that my chalkboard will have enough tooth, I'm going to use a little black foam roller, and I saw a little goober plop right there. Be careful if you're wearing clothes you want to keep, because the foam rollers will spit at you just a teeny bit if you have a lot of paint in your roller. So I'm going to put my second coat on. With the foam roller. You can make your rolling smoother by rolling longer. So if you want a really very slightly eggshell tooth, you roll until you can hear the rollers sing. And no, the squeaking isn't the singing. You'll know it when you hear it. It makes it worth it just to, or makes it tempting just to pull out a roller and give it a try. Okay, so I'll get the rest of this base coated and dried, and then we'll get ready to paint. All right, while I'm waiting for my paint to dry, I'll show you, this is a new little scraper that we have from the Ranger people, and this is how you can get those little pin dots. See how it just cleans them all off? They're all piled up over here now, of spatters off your mat. And I think the problem with the spatters is not that they're stuck more, but they're just so microscopic that when you wipe, you know, with a paper towel, it just doesn't take them off. But this is how you can loosen things to wipe off of your mat. This also is great for when you're using your silhouette cutter machine for doing your words and your etching, your glass etching. It's good for applying texture paste. It's good for doing your dishes. It actually will scrape off the gunk when you can't get it off with us. I've got one by my sinks and everything else. And while we're on that note, there is another, I've got a couple tips and hints I'm going to give you while I'm waiting for paint to dry, and I think I've been saving them up a little bit. This is a new product that we have that is a pen. I don't know if I can get it open. A pen on one end. So it's like a micron pen. Okay, on one side, and it is a glue stick on the other. And I don't know about you, but when I have my journal out and I find a little article or a picture that is perfect, I want to be able to glue it down. I can just pop this in my purse and I've got, or in my paint stuff, and I've got it right handy. It's a wonderful invention. This is the piece of art that I did, and we had given away the little set of wood when we got these new little corner embellishments. I took my coaster from my coaster set and I put some heavy tack it over and over and let it dry clear. Now I can take the pineapple off and I can put the coaster on, and I have it there and it doesn't fall off. Okay, I've got to put it on straight, but it doesn't leave a residue. And this is one of the butterflies from one of my other recent projects. I could very easily put a butterfly there. So you can change that picture out as many times as you want. You can change the size, you can change the artwork. Excellent. So tack it over. Whoops, that's tape. Yeah. tack it over and over will make you into a lovely giant, like a instant Velcro. Okay, one of the things that I have been using this is our brush groomer. I have been using this at my house for, we'll pretend like this is my makeup brush. My makeup brush is about the size of my base coat brushes. But I like to put antibacterial soap in my hand and then clean my brushes out once a week and then let them dry and whatever, and then they don't have all that stuff built up. But that, because my hands are always in gunk anyhow, my hands get very dried out, so I don't like actually putting a bunch of soap in there, going through 5 or 6, 7 brushes. So I can put a pump of soap right here in the shell-shaped brush groomer, and I can just keep it right in there, switch to a new brush, continue like that, and I don't waste a whole lot of soap, and I can see very easily when my brushes are clean. But it's really an anti-drying. I can use really super hot water to rinse the brushes out because I'm running it on here instead of in my hand. So super, super duper useful for just sitting there. And you can put soap in it while you are not using it for your brushes. Okay, here is my magnet, and here is my black painted magnet board. Okay, so even with the black on the board, it sticks no problem. All right, I want to talk about how I get ready to paint roses. Here's what I did. I did one without undercoating. I did my very first one to see if I could like the colors. I have been chasing the elusive yellow rose palette for a long time. So I'm really excited to do yellow roses finally. This is my favorite. So once I get like a little formula figured out, then I know I would like a little bit more open shape. This one's a little too tight. But so what I'll do is I will do these colors with these shapes. And then I sketched out what I want to do on the top. So I put in my greens, I just very loosely with little dibbly-dabbly brushes. But you can see everything that we're about to do, you could downscale your brush and you could definitely do it in a small size. One more thing to talk about, and with roses it's most important, it seems to always be the plague. A lot of times we paint roses and we have a very light tip, like on our pink roses and on our yellow roses. If this was on a white palette, you would have a very difficult time seeing the lightest color on your brush to shade with. And notice how many of these I have. If you can't control your colors, then you have a hard time painting your rose. So on the gray palette, it makes every color visible. And that is why these gray palettes used to be very, very expensive. They are now actually cheaper than the Strathmore white palettes that we get from Michaels and stuff. So I highly recommend switching over to the gray palette just for ease of light colors. I know I'm going to want a gold band around this, and that's the first thing that I'm going to do is put my gold band. I'm going to use my half pipe compass. And maybe further in than that. See how far in do I want it. And I am just going to scribe where my band is going to go all the way around. Keep your hand to the upright. I've got some rough I need to sand off of there. Somebody was sloppy with her paint. Now to make the second line, I'm just going to increase the width. And now I don't have to measure all the way around. This is brilliant. The half pipe compass comes with a lid so that it protects you when you're putting it into your painting supplies, and it has extra compass leads on board. I got these fantastic new accents in, and you can reverse them. You can put them in all kinds of directions and stuff. And I'm not certain if I'm going to use one of them down here, but I'm making my line the same as this little piece that sticks out. You can paint them any color you want. They could be tone on tone. You can frame your pieces. Whoops, sorry. You could frame, let's see, your pieces on alternating ends. You can do them all the way around, you know, and do like that. We've got big ones, little ones, sound like a hot dog song. But anyway, so I'm not sure if I'm going to use those yet, so I'm not going to paint, whoa, sorry Joe, not going to paint down here at this point. I want to paint where my roses go over so that I don't end up having to sneak paint in between things and having it not look pristine and very straight. So what we'll do We'll get out the magical green stretchy tape. We'll get out the 1/4 inch size. And what stretchy tape is good for, I have to come back around and re-mark my corners here because I was reaching across the board and doing it for camera more than I was doing it for straightness here. So I'll come back around, measure that out, and follow my line a little better. There we go. And the same thing on the other one. Sharp corners are a little bit more hard, but I think it gets me where I want to be. Alright, so for my corners, what I'm going to do is I'm going to need 1/8 inch for that. Okay, so I've got my 1/8 inch stretchy tape to go around a tight corner like that. Absolutely need the skinny stuff. So what we'll do, line that up and make sure it's lined down here. And then I'm going to pull, I got a little nugget of stuff. I'm going to pull and stretch it as I tape around this corner. And just go a little bit slow. It's nice to have it done though, it just makes painting everything just so much easier. Make sure that I go straight and then I can ink that out over there. Alright, then I bray it down. You could bray down with your fingernail or you can bray down with that scraper we talked about earlier. And then I'll tape the inside corners and then I'll use the thicker tape or Scotch tape for my straight edges. So we'll take our little scraper and we'll just scrape down those edges. Make sure they're nice and tight. To make our line, we're going to use gloss varnish and we're going to mix it with our brass powders. This is actual metal fibers that are in the powders. Come in colors. The rust is gorgeous, but they come in colors so you can mix them together. You can put them in any medium. Gonna mix in our varnish, and you got to mix it with something that has staying power, like water doesn't work. Okay, I could have put those slightly closer together. Okay, get that in there. Of course, when you make the fun noises, that makes it so much funner. Okay. So get it mixed together, and you can kind of see when it's mixed. You want to make sure to wipe off your palette knife because that powder will build up. You could use the brush cleaner to take it off though. Alright, so I don't want to brush this line because if I brush the line, I'm going to dig under and I'm going to have a ratty looking gold border. And this is a pretty heavy border for me. So I'm going to use my pouncers, my fingertip pouncers. They fit on your finger. They have lids now, which I love, so that you can keep it fresh while you're waiting for your paint to dry. I'm going to go into this. I would use, normally I would use, if I had used Scotch tape, I would have used the ink sweeper because it'll go down and along, but I feel like it's about as wide as I dare to go, and I don't want to make a mess, so I'll have a lot more control with the fingertip dauber. And believe it or not, having it on the end of your finger really is an improvement. So what we're going to do is we're going to pounce straight up and down, just in a row, in a row, in a row. You can make, the nice thing about mixing your own metal powder is you don't have to worry about the color not base coating. So you can get a solid base coat by just adding a little bit more of your powder. And, oh, I just biffed it. So what you could do is you could put another piece of tape, like Scotch tape, next to that and then go in with the bigger tool. Alright. And so I'm just going to inch my way along, but look how fast that does go. Just be real careful where you've got the skinny tape in the corners. And peeling off your tape, you'll always want to peel with your tape at, get you on camera, with your tape at a 45-degree angle because that's how it will cut the edge of the paint. Oops, but don't drag it on your piece. Nice thing about painting with black is it cleans up very nicely. Okay, and then we'll just peel everything off. Okay, I've got goobers, a couple places where I biffed out of the lines and where I made a mess, so I'll just take my base coat and I'll just fix it. Now is the best time to fix. Notice how beautiful the lines are, even here in the corners. Okay, that is why it's worth taking the time to tape. And you want to remove your tape as soon as you can. Otherwise, sometimes, I notice this especially with glass paints, sometimes the paint will adhere to the tape itself and it will come off as you're peeling it. So you've got to get that tape off of there as soon as you're done painting it, even while the paint is still wet. All right, in order to put the pattern on, what I'm going to do is I know I'm going to have one rose that's kind of off center, that's kind of the big guy. And then, so what I've done is I've made myself my little map, okay, and I know that I want to have a couple of buds and trailing out over here, and then leaves. So I'm just going to mark out my general area. Okay, and then maybe we'll have a smaller rose over here, and then one crossing into this area up here. And we'll make this one look out this way, this one will look this way, and probably this one will look out from there. Now in the meantime there'll be leafy poos. Okay, and we want them to kind of cascade into the scene. Some of these will be kind of big coming out from where the stem would be. And then these, of course, will have flowers and all that kind of stuff. We want to bring some stuff up and over the gold. Let's see, this needs to maybe be one more leaf. So you just kind of start getting the little generalization of where you want things. This is going to be some more buds. And maybe another bud. He can be aiming that way. Now this would all wipe off with water or spit or varnish. If you're having problems getting a color off of your board, it may be that you're putting it on while the paint is wet, and that will grab anything, so be wary of that. Okay, and then these are going to be leaf cluster things, dark leaf clusters. We've got to have some green establishing our flower areas. So not everybody gets to be the same color and all that. So these that I'm doing at the dark. Okay, so let's talk about contrast for a second. I don't mean to make this into how to design a rose motif, but why not talk about it? Really, once you have your rose down and your flower down and your leaf down, you should be able to take those pieces and put them together any way that you can on any piece. And that's kind of what we're going to show you today. But so when I'm making my plan here, I took my dark green color. Let's get you in closer. Chase ya. Okay, so the yellow roses are going to be the center of interest. Then we have our lighter leaf colors, which are next to those center of interest to break the color down. If I put that yellow rose on top of black with no break next to it, it would just look like a big polka dot. So I've got dark green that's very close to the background, then I step it up to another value, then I step it up to another value, and then I step it up to the final highlight, which is almost to a white in here. So I go from black to white using these little bridges, using that rule that we talked about in one of the last videos. It's the rule of 2. We'll get out the color wheel, the grayscale card. Here's our white, here's our black. And so what you want to do is if you went from, if you try to walk up the color scale one by one, then the journey would take you very long, and it would take a lot of control to get that to happen, and to get all the way from white to black would be very difficult. But if you think of it like a bridge going over a big river, like one of those wooden slat bridges, you could safely jump 2 steps instead of doing little rickety little steps. You can safely go every 2 steps to get across that river. That's what we're doing to get from black to white, is we are going in little 2 steps, skipping values or darknesses of color. Okay, so we're going to use these areas, and back out, sorry. So So we're going to use these areas out here are going to be the darkest green to help us fill this area and do our two-step in. Okay, so I think, if I'm looking at it, I think I like it. And then of course we'll fill in with the filler fluff stuff. So now what we have to do is put some green in there. And so this is what I'll leave as my line drawing. And then of course in your pattern packet you would get a much different line drawing. So we'll get out evergreen. My bottle of evergreen is a disaster. When you shake your paint, I know this, but I don't ever do this. When you shake your paint, if you pop it once on the table, it makes that bubble that's sticking to the roof go down into the bottle, and then you won't have that mess in your jars. Can you see me sitting here filming videos and popping bottles of paint with popping the table every time? That'd be funny. Okay, I'm going to get a big Filbert. Okay, I've got out my 1/2 inch Clearly Amazing Filbert, and I've got Faux Finishing Medium, and I'm going to load Faux Finishing Medium in my brush with my evergreen color, and then we're just going to kind of slip slap and put leaf shapes in this area. I'm going to go right over my pattern. I'm not going to worry about that. We want the Faux Finishing Medium in there so that it's not solidly base coated. And we'll bring that color in. This has got to be loose and slip slappy. It's got to be. We don't want a delineated edge to our painting. And you'll notice that the color will probably and most likely sink into your background. We're not going to worry about that either. And this needs to be under all the elements, not completely under, but basically completely under. Like if I missed a spot, I wouldn't worry. It can be under my roses. So obviously you wouldn't have sketched your design out like this. You might sketch just the perimeter where you think the elements are going to be, like a line for the leaf lines. Okay, so we'll continue picking up the evergreen. Notice that you can't really tell. Notice that my line drawing is coming off. That will come off everywhere where I've got my lines. It's possible that if I just tickle it softly over the top that it might stay, so I would be intentional if I wanted to get that off. Now we'll go back in and we'll start putting some leaves that are more of the paint, less of the medium. Okay, we can make them fat. We can make them root. We can make them ugly, just like that. And we'll just make little leaf strokes. Okay, these will settle down into the... Keep picking these long, skinny projects. Somebody needs to talk to me about that. Okay, let's just get this. I don't want it too balanced. I think I just made a total pyramid of balancedness. If I wasn't trying to be on camera, this would be when I would take out the Artist Buddy, because I have to flip around a lot. So if I needed to, and I will need to, when this dries, I'll go back over it and base that where it goes over the lines. Okay, so now we've got some nice little filler leaves. Okay, that's in the background. So now what we'll do is we'll go in and just slip slap to kind of connect them. I don't want to blend them out. I just want to kind of slap some, there's other greenery back there is what I'm saying to my composition. Down here in the background, that would definitely be green. So I'm just going to slip slap to kind of connect. Over here maybe not so much because that's going to be that open area. Leave some open, leave some closed. And add a couple more leaves if you see a spot that seems to be screaming for one. Okay, now we'll go into the next color down, our two-step. It's going to be avocado, and we might have a little bit of our medium in that as well. Okay, and so this, I want to go back to some of my leaves and decide if maybe a couple of them don't need to be a little bit stronger with like a glaze over the top. Okay, just tuck in. They could be in a different spot. So they're layers of leaves, which would be pretty. Oops. Now I want to go into here in what would be the outer areas and with medium in my brush, and I want to just slip slap towards my greenery. Not everywhere that I did the dark green, but I definitely want to bridge my roses. Now this area in the middle is going to be very dark, so we don't want to have, because that's where it's deepest, so we don't want to do a whole lot of stuff over there. Okay. Now we'll have plenty of opportunity to go in and do other things with these leaves, but it's easiest to put this background colors in now. Alright, we're going to undercoat our roses, and notice that I've swapped positions. This now is the front biggest rose, and then this is smaller, just because of how the green turned out. Alright, so we're going to base coat with Moon Yellow, and then when we get to those edges, we're going to feather it out, but I'm going to let that base coat just sit there. Kind of basing a little bit smaller than my rose. Now, what about this ridge right here where our band is, which is one of the problems with banding first. So what we can do is we can go ahead and sand that just a little bit. All right, I'm going to wipe out my paint, and then I'm going to feather, wipe out my paint more. And I'm going to feather that sharp edge. Yellow roses paint different than pink roses. I was trying really hard to use my little formula that I had for the pink roses, and I'll tell you, just a completely different beast here. But I'm so excited about yellow roses. It's a color you don't see. You always see that pink color. You don't see the yellow. I think it's because it's harder. You definitely have to do things a little bit differently. So I'm just using the tickly edge of my brush to give that just a little bit of a faded look. I can go in and make that middle a little bit more solid, fading it to the lines I already have. I'm going to just ignore that little line up there. If it bugs you, you can get rid of it. Okay, now that's the base, and we'll blow dry that. Okay, one of the things I want to point out to you while this is drying is we have already bridged our colors by putting this gold band on here. Notice that your eye, these don't look like 3 polka dots as much as they do part of the composition because of the gold band. And then by bridging those colors from the black, it's already starting to kind of take shape. I know maybe you can't see it, but trust me, that's what's happening, and loving it. So I'll go back in while I'm waiting for stuff to dry and base coat my leaves over my gold. Otherwise it will not look like it's really going over the gold. It'll look like it's been painted on top. To lay out my colors, get you in a little closer. Alright, to lay out my colors, what I'm going to do is I've got my light buttermilk. I'm going to mix lemon yellow and light buttermilk. This is the magical yellow rose palette that I have discovered. Okay, here we go. I'm going to put that right over here. I could have it maybe just a little bit more lemony. So maybe ease up on the, maybe 2 lemons to 1 buttermilk. Buttermilk's a pretty strong color. Okay, clean my palette knife. You always want an offset palette knife. That's what this means right here. And you want something super flexible so that you can just push on your paints to blend them. You never really stir because you're not effective this way with your palette knife. You're always bouncing the colors together like that. So you can't, I would not be able to mix on this palette with a straight palette knife because I would be running my fingers through my paints. So that is, this is one of the, I guess the nicest, not the nicest, but the most effective palette knife I've used in my painting time. Okay, so I've got this laid out intentionally. This is my darkest shading color for doing the stroke part of the rose. This is, burnt sienna. It's burnt sienna and raw sienna. And that is the wrong color. I am supposed to not have raw sienna. Look at the difference in traditional raw sienna, which is empty, and the raw sienna. Okay, so this raw sienna has got almost like it's got white added to it. It turned into a brown. This is still a gold color, and this is the one, I tried this color first and it was bad. So I'm just going to kind of wipe this out over there. So it's not raw sienna, and we'll get rid of that bottle of paint too. So then this is our shade color, and then this is our deepest shade color. But we want to have that laid out with the lights in a row so that we don't make a mistake and pick up the wrong color. Alright, we're going to use our, this is, what size? I'm not sure this is going to be big enough. Hang on. Okay, I'm going to show you the march through and the slow motion on this project because painting on the surface will be much better if I show it to you quickly. So I'll show you the slow-mo going here. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to start by dressing our brush in faux medium. Just a flat dress, not a scoop. Okay, that's just going to keep things sliming along. We are going to heel load, which is the back skinny small side of your brush, into moon yellow, and the front load on the toe into the pineapple mix or the lemon yellow mix, and we're going to blend. And we're going to keep picking up until I get a blend in the middle that I like, where the colors meet and I don't have a big dark space and it's juicy enough. Lots of criteria there. These are going to be our back petals. Okay, and I might want to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and pick up just a little bit of my light buttermilk. Okay, so I always breathe in deeply. So we want to do our back petals are going to be the 3 petals, okay? And we're just going to make them not quite connected and kind of chop at them, okay? I'll reload my paint like every time I just about take a stroke and put a little bit of the buttermilk. And then, so that didn't quite base coat, that's why we did that faded thing. But I can go over them one more time, allow them to dry for a second, and then go over them one more time. And by doing that, what that does for us, let's go in closer, try camera here. What that does for us is it gives us these illusion of other little petals there. Okay, now I'll pick up the same stuff in my toe, and actually do I want to go ahead and maybe, let me do this. This is what I've decided I'm doing. Maybe I haven't decided, huh? I'm going to pick up just a little bit. I'm going to stroke these one color and then kind of overstroke them another. Right, so I'm going to go back in. It doesn't work if I start out with the darkest color on there. So I went back in and loaded a little bit of true ochre on my brush and then made that petal stroke one more time. Now I'll load my moon yellow and my mix. and I'll come in for a front petal. Now see, that is fading into the background just a little bit, so that is an excuse and a call for a little bit more of the light buttermilk. And we'll make those be the same. I want some variation though. Don't make them be smooth across. You can do that, but it's a totally different kind of rose. Okay, now I'm going to go into, I'm going to start with the buttermilk in the mix and the moon. And that's going to be my main petal guy there. Okay, I can stroke it more than once. I can wipe my brush down and get a little bit more of the buttermilk going on and do another couple little petals inside if I want to. With my dirty brush, don't get this too juicy. You start losing control when you get it too juicy. I'm just going to make those taps to either side. Then reaching away from, this might be, now I can shade that in. This reaching away from my taps, I'm going to stroke in with lots of little scumbly strokes. Alright, so now we've got something that's very, very much vanilla, and not to worry, I'm going to wipe out my brush, just wipe it right on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up the ochre and some garbage from my palette. Okay, and the lemony mix. And I'm going to go on this front bowl and I'm just going to stroke again to deepen the colors right there. Okay, that will give us a little bit of a belly. While I've got the color sitting right there, why not do that now? Now I'll dirty brush pick up the mix and the moon. Note that the mix and the moon are very close in color. That's why we're not getting a big high contrast. But I really love, like this is my love. We go back in and we highlight and we do a little bit of shading to it. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here again with my little stabs, and then I'm going to reach away from it. And oops, I want buttermilk now. So feel free to change the colors as you need to. And you could make that bend down right there and make that form that bowl. I'm going to wash my brush. I'm getting a little muddy there. And I think I'm going to go ahead and dry. Alright, so I'm basically dry. I'm going to go ahead right now, before I put on a whole bunch of front petals that I don't want to mess up, I'm going to float my center. And I'm going to float the bowl. And I can float a little bit in the middle here. Okay, so I give it just a little bit of a throaty color. I tried doing the throat in the bowl thing that you do on pink roses up in the very first step, and it just didn't stay. The colors just kind of swallowed it up, so I put it in there. You can also float with just a little bit back behind here. If you want to increase that intensity, you can go into the buttermilk and you can increase a little bit of the look of the petaliness of your rose. And you can do this at the end, you can choose. Okay, so I dress my brush in the faux medium again. Go into the toe, into the lemon, the heel into the moon. And now we're going to do these outside petals. Okay, so we want to bring that out, and we want to bring a little corner in here. Now this is going to be one that we're going to repeat because of coverage. It's yellow. Yellow doesn't like to cover very well. Okay, and we'll bring that around. We'll bring out these big front petals. Oop, hold it down. My paper is bending. Okay, now we're not quite connected in the middle, but that's okay. We'll wait until this dries. I'll hit it with a dryer, and then we'll restroke over the top of that. I might be able to do it right now without drying. It looks like this side is drying already. losing my highlight color, so I'll go into buttermilk and blend that. And so by overstroking these, what we're getting is we're getting some neat little ruffles and ridges. Okay. Now we'll go in and we have one top layer, and I'm just going to let this dry. Okay, while I'm dry, I'm going to bring the throat or the belly of my rose down a little bit. I didn't like how short that was. Bring that around. Okay, then we'll load our brush up. Faux medium first. Same drill. And we'll bring another layer of petals over the top of this, keeping it quite off our bowl. And then from there, if we're happy with our coverage, we'll pick up antique white, and we can add, now we want to wait, actually we'll wait for this, because what we're going to do is we're going to add these top petals, but we want to make sure that we're okay with our contrast and stuff first. So we want to make sure that we beef up like the shading in the bowl and stuff like that. We add just a hint of the burnt color up there, and we want to do other highlights and stuff. So this is the time when you can go back and start playing your rose. If you go over something in front, just reshade it in. This is definitely one that I would practice on some dark paper because of the dark background. It's just going to be much easier if you have a practice. But I love the open shape of my rose. We're not there yet with the drama or the darkness. So we'll float in the, is it the traditional? Yeah, the traditional raw umber. Now we're going to choose a side. I'm going to choose this side. This is how we make it just a deeper rose. I'm going to have to put those highlights back in. Okay, and then we go into just a little bit of the red. And let that dry. And we're going to tuck in a bit of the red. Okay, and that makes our pretty loose rose. Alright, the Artist Buddy is going to lift me up just a little bit, and it's going to make it so that I can turn the piece. Actually, I'll lay it down. I don't want to distort the angle. And the biggest thing that I'm going to have a hard time with is when I swing it, it's a long piece. Obviously it's a rectangle, so I'm going to a little bit. Now I can swing right over the top of my palette, which I think is going to be a bonus. We'll see how this works. Alright, so palette back, and we'll load and load. Put our glasses on. Always good plans. Okay, let's get you on camera. So we'll start with our big guy. Alright, so we're going to do our back petals. Remember, we want them to be odd shaped, and we want lots of angles to them. Okay. And now what I can do is I can swing around over to this guy, over yonder here, and I can put on those back petals. So by doing these in a row and a row and a row, you will be able to move through a bunch of roses pretty darn quickly. Okay, and so we'll go back over it one more time. Okay, very strokerly. Come over here. The biggest obstacles I have is knocking over all my bottles of paint when I do this with the long skinny pieces. Trying to keep you centered. Okay, now I'll go back over here and I'll give it one more coat. Get rid of that black area back there. Okay, then we'll put in same colors. I'm using a lot of moon yellow. All right, then we have our next row. And I could use just a little bit of my buttermilk. All right, then we'll put in our middle, go into just the buttermilk for the middle. And I think we'll dip into the true ochre. And that's going to be our center piece. True ochre isn't even showing up. Okay, now we'll get that dry. Got our roses. And a little closer, I'm going to use my clean brush and float, if I can find a place on my palette to float. And I want to increase the true ochre feeling there in the middle. And it was almost dry. So much easier when you have to change directions to have something that just wiggles around. And I love going over this palette because that takes up a lot of room on your desk. Okay, you don't need to wait for that to dry. You do need to dry out your brush, and then you'll load. A little bit medium, and do the same process again. Oops, I thought that was water in my brush. Alright, so into the mix, into the yellow, and okay, load a little bit more. Okay, now this is where we're going to do the stab thing side to side. So we go, oops, and I'm going to get into buttermilk. If I can't see it, I need to add some buttermilk. And maybe even a little bit more. Got a pretty juicy load on my brush. Okay, put our stabs on there. That just adds that little look of a petal. And just strokey stroke across. And cup it up slightly. Do you see how it's going uphill? Okay, now we'll get this dry because we have, well, I guess let's put a second row in front of these. So we'll put light buttermilk, and we'll do one more stab situation, and one more layer of front petals. And now we'll dry. All right, we'll get you on camera. And we're going to pick up the true ochre and float a nice, lovely belly there. And that just does a lot to yellow up the rose. I'm going to put a little bit more in there. Whoops, get the black out. Picking up junk from my palette, don't do that. Okay, we'll let it dry. Alright, now we're going to add our sides. This one might be a little bit of a problem because of the size of it. But I'm going to start over here, and then if this is a problem for me, I'm going to switch to a slightly bigger brush. Alright, so we've got the same stuff going in our rows. We might have to redo this because of the colors of the background is over there. So push on that, and then bring that around the corner. Try to keep it sucked up next to the bowl or to the belly. That makes for a slightly nicer formed rose. Since we're going to do that again, I'm just not going to worry about that. Now we'll come out here. And get some of these bigger petals out here. Okay, and I like the look of the little V's that we're creating. I'm going to get into a little bit of the buttermilk. And this will create the layers. So we'll come over here and just retap those colors. Leading with the toe. Okay, that gives us a nice open, almost has a daffodil kind of look to it right now, but we'll fix that. I could do one more time if I wanted to, and I could deepen the color now with the True Ochre. I could go in there and just get myself a nice little shady shade thing going into the bowl. Could even bring it down and in a little bit. Use the chisel of my brush. And while that's drying, we'll come over here and we'll work on this guy right here. Okay, so it's just an elbow, kind of turning the corner. It's a good idea to paint this big guy last anyway, because these petals will go over these petals. So we'll just paint this one normal, and then those last petals won't matter. Okay. So we'll let that dry, and we'll come back to this guy. So that'll be buttermilk and moon yellow. And I put a little bit of a lemon in there too. Alright, and we'll give an inside set of petals. More of the buttermilk, light buttermilk. Okay, now we'll let that completely dry, because then we're going to dress it up with our floats. Come back over to this guy that's dry now, and increase the it's almost like a base coat stroke. Okay. So now we'll get them a little bit brighter. So I'm going to go into the True Ochre and the buttermilk. And bring those colors in. And I like it when it leaves a little ridge of color next to it just gives it a little bit of dimension. This one is really especially pretty right there. Okay, we'll get those two dry. Alright, we've got all dry, cooled my board off, reload. This is the thing that I think was part of the elusiveness of the colors, is maybe I had the colors right, but maybe I didn't take the time to dry between the layers. And you know, if I really glom on that paint, or I paint on a slightly lighter surface, that might be okay, but I think there's some elements to this that I think were causing me to stumble. Now we'll finish our inner bands of stuff make sure you keep them choppy. I can't emphasize choppiness enough, because choppiness is what gives that multi-petaled rose thing, rose detail. Okay. Now while I'm waiting for this one to dry, what I'll do is I'll go in and do my my little buds. So I'll come in with this, and once again we're going to need a base coat. So I'll just do the top strokes. Got a little guy right here, just forming. Okay, and that's going to help us once we put green and things like that around those. That's going to help our gold and our yellow kind of bridge what's going on. And then we're going to tuck in our blue little flowers, and that's going to make everybody get real happy. Okay, and we'll let that dry. Now we'll come over here, and we're pretty dry out here, so time to paint the big guy, the big kahuna. And before I do that, I think we'll go into our shade color, so our true ochre. And I think what we'll do, okay, this guy's going to go over the top, so I think we'll just shade on the edges of this to increase the depth below. Maybe a little bit of the... That way when I put the petals on it, it'll already be self-shaded. We'll see if my theory is correct. Okay, so same drill. Finding blending spots is tough. All right, we're going to come out from the edge. I'm going to have to work to get this big. Okay, leaves me lots of room to do inside stuff. Okay, and then we'll pull it in from right at the edge, and we'll let that little fringe right there be a pretend leaf of petal. Okay, so that puts us over the top of that other rose. I'll have to get that dry and give it one more coat. We'll come out one more time. I love what it's doing for the frilled edges there, having to base coat like this. And I don't know what we would call this. It's like a stroke base coat or something like that. Okay, and then we'll come over to our little buds and we'll get them time. Just got that little cast of black to them, I don't like. And then we'll do a little bit of shading. Before, well, we can do that shading after. Okay, now we'll do our inner, let's go ahead and dry. Now we'll go in and do our inside set of strokes. I'm going to switch to the dirty brushing into the true ochre and the antique white, or light buttermilk, just to give it a little bit more depth. And it gives those whites, makes our whites feel a little whiter. Now I want to not mess too much. I want to go through and start doing all those cool, crazy little strokes. Well, that's not okay to do that right yet. We've got to wait till things dry, and then we can do it. Okay, because then you'll lose them all, and then you'll have a dickens of a time trying to put in details. Okay, and I liked that with a little bit of dark in there, so I went back and spread the love there. Now let's put in our, with the mix and the true ochre, let's do our buds. And that'll take a couple of coats, and we'll definitely have to shade. Yep, that'll take a couple coats. Alright, doing the buds will just be a repeat of the other stuff, so I'm gonna not go into a lot of detail on the buds. I'll walk you through one, but not all of them. Alright, now I'm gonna go into my shading color True Ochre with a float. And I'm gonna clean up this area in the centers of the roses. Yellow them up a little bit. I would do that to the buds, but they're not ready yet. We can yellow up a little bit to the outside here as well. It's almost like glazing, but we don't want to glaze over these yellows. I tried that and it turned to mud. Now I can go back here and I can float where petals end. Things would be a little bit darker. I can give it a little bit of a float back there to increase the contrast. Okay, so if you want to do that, you can add some float love around. Then we're going to go into the traditional raw sienna. Last project I was all raw umber, and this project I'm all raw sienna, and I've got my words all mixed up. Now we're going to take just, well, you know what, I want that on the bottom because the weight of the color will work better. So I want to just go ahead and glaze off to one side, a bit stronger, and then glaze down there. Okay, and that's making things behave very nicely. I like it. Okay, then we'll do the same thing over here. And that just tucks that little bit of depth into your rose. And this guy, I'll get it down here. Okay, then we can get just a little bit of the burnt sienna. Just dried to a crispy little coating here. Alright, now I'll switch back over to here. And just within that other color, add a little bit of that depth. Okay, now why don't we go ahead and do the buds? Well, I'm going to still get them based. Okay, so I'm switching back to moon yellow because it base coats better. I'm going to shade these puppies anyway. Alright, now while I'm waiting for those to dry, I'll go ahead and put my top petals. Anything I want to highlight, I can highlight. If I want to take some buttermilk and I want a more buttermilky petals out there, I could totally add buttermilk petals. You have to decide on your rose. I'm actually liking the contrast that I have right now. So I'm going to take the buttermilk off of my brush. And now I'm going to load as if. I'm going to go into the ochre and probably the buttermilk and a little lemon, kind of a little of everything. And I want it nice and juicy. These are going to be set down, get out, get in, get out strokes. Okay, now this is where we're going to diffuse this, not dandelion, whatever that flower is that's yellow, look. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to just spread some little, a little bit bigger than that, little sideways slide strokes. Okay, and what that does, placement of that one, is it adds that front fullness. Okay, that just gives us a couple scattered. This just adds that front fullness and gives us a couple scattered petals in the very front. Okay, I'm liking them. Now I'll go in and shade. I'll start with the True Ochre in these little guys in here are buds. And we're going to cover them up mostly with leaves anyway. And we could give it just that tip. We don't want them too detailed out to the outsides, so maybe this little guy right here could get her just that little tip of the red. Maybe he can too. And we'll let these guys not be so dark. Okay, now we have to take care of our buds and get them anchored in. So we're going to use a round brush. This is an easy stroke brush. This is going to give you a great little point. We're going to go into our dark green, and this is probably going to be something we have to highlight. And we're going to juicy load our brush and get rid of the wet ferrule. If your ferrule is wet, then you lose control. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to just bring this color, and it's going to need another like little base coaty situation, up and in and around, cupping the base. I'm going to go into the lighter green, the avocado instead. I can't see. Bring some out the back side. Just go right over that puppy. And then make them be loose coming out the edges there. Okay, and that just cups them. Okay, I've got those colors on. I'm going to dirty brush pick up some of the Hauser light green, and I'm going to stroke just a little bit more on there, just kind of blending. It's not showing as much as I want it to, and that detail is really pretty. So we want to have that trailing off kind of calyx thing happening, and we want it to be visible. Okay, we'll go ahead and put the stems in right now. Stems need to be big enough to hold a rose. And I'm just going to chop it at it, not adding a lot of water to my brush. Most of this stem is going to be covered with little blue flowers, but that's why we put them in now, so that we don't have to worry. Am I dry? I'm dry. Okay, and we've got to dress these guys up over here. I'll get those in a second. Dress these guys up. Make sure to draw that out. See how nice that brush goes flat, and then I can get these really skinny little graceful ends to things. It is a magical brush. There aren't very many magical round brushes. There are only two that are magical. And this is one of them. Okay. Now we need to focus on dressing up some of our leaves. And that is going to be my Filbert brushes, not my Filbert, my angle shader as well. I'm just going to shade with it though. And we're going to highlight. So I'm going to get some of the Hauser light. I'm going to come out to these edge flowers or leaves, and we will, too bright, oof, ooh doggy, avocado, and we'll highlight those leaves and just dress them up. Pretend like there's some more there. Fill it in just a little bit more. here. This looks like it needs to be a little bit brighter and more finished. More leaves need to be happening here. We could spend a lot of time on leaves and make them be very realistic. I think with stroke roses, I think we need, this is more of an impressionistic painting, so I think we're going to stick with that. I think that this isn't the right place for that. Okay, so now I can go into the lighter green. And notice that I'm not worried about hitting that to that. I know this is freaking my son Joe, who is my video editor, out. But it doesn't need to. It adds that look of a bent petal. Sometimes these things are happy little accidents. So we'll go in and we'll just give ourselves the indication of little leaves. And because I've just shaded that leaf right there, what happens is it looks like it's been, because I just floated it, it looks like it's been shaded because it's over that dark area. All right, we need some lighter ones over here. And I need a little more water. Now I think we've got a nice full leaf looking setup going on here. Now we need some blues. Time to get out our blues. Alright, now it's time to put in our blues. I've got a stroke filbert so that I can get a good line. We're going to need faux finishing medium. That keeps everything transparent and flowing. And we want to keep these transparent when we're first establishing them. So I'm mixing just quite a bit of faux medium until I start seeing it look a little like stained glass where I can see through it. And now we're going to go and fill in, keeping things petally and creating some shapes. I don't know what these flowers are going to be. Maybe they're just like a fantasy filler flower. I don't want to cover up all my darkest leaves. I do want to cover up some of my stems. And I don't want to just have it surround like the flowers, you know, just be like casing them kind of, you know. I don't want to lose all of this good dark area. So make them hodgepodgely come in and out. We can put a leaf out over here. And notice that the movement is squiggle, oops, grab, grab, grab. Squiggle, squiggle, squiggle. I'll have some of this coming out from underneath these leaves. Maybe some underneath this flower. And this area would be maybe a little bit bigger than you think it should be. A little bit here and there. And a base coat over that area right there. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good assortment. We can have a couple sneaking in the center here, I guess. Otherwise it might look a little lonely. Okay, now we're going to go up one in our blue, and this is where we're going to stop being quite so random. And we're going to give things just little petally strokes. It's not quite a stroke, it's not quite not a stroke. Little tiny clusters of little strokes. And I'm going to drop down one brush size. I'm going into a number 4. I want it petally enough, and if I'm using too big a brush, then I'll be too random. Okay, it just makes it not quite baby's breathish looking. Little petals coming out. I have some dripping and sneaking out in random places. Okay. This is good for if you think of doing pink roses with some little sprigs of like baby's breath or something like that. This can be translated into any color scheme that you want. It's quite a flexible design. You could have, I saw a beautiful picture of a swag and it had pink and yellow roses. It'd be beautiful together. Okay, so there's our blues sneaking out. I'll put just a little bit of this blue in here. But here's what we don't want to do. We don't want to put a light color in there because that'll look like it's like a spotlight. Okay, and you look at it for balance. Now we go into our brighters, and that's going to be the winter blue. And we're going to do the same thing with little sprigs, but notice I'm not trying to hit on top of the ones that I've already hit. I think I'm going to mix a little bit of my other blue into my winter blue. The winter blue seems to be a little separated color-wise. And I can also get into my stroke brush if I want. And I can do some little baby ones. Maybe out it towards the tips of things. Okay, I don't normally like to skip around. I'll switch in between the two brushes. Pardon me. Okay, if my brush starts getting out of control, that means I have way too much paint in it. And it was definitely getting out of control. And out here we would get into our little strokes. This builds layers of color so that it creates the illusion of the depth. By having everything not line up on top of each other, then that makes it look deeper. We're going to glaze down with some traditional raw sienna. These roses over on the sides, because they are screaming for attention over there. And we'll deepen their shading to make it look like they're more highlighted than they actually are. So I'll use the burnt sienna to give it just that little bit deeper shading, but they can be not quite so bright. We're going to put in some what I call focal leaves. We're going to go into the avocado green. And now that we've got all this stuff painted on here, we're going to put leaves to support our rose that will charcoal paint painted right over the tops of that stuff because these are the things that are on top. This one is right over the top of that one to give the indication of depth. I'm going to shade our leaves with evergreen. Just deepen that right on next to the leaf and try to round it out. I got a little too much water on my brush. Evergreen's a very transparent color. So after I tuck it around the corners, I round out the color and draw it into the leaf. Just to give that little bit of deep right next to the rose. Miss anybody? I think I did. Alright, we'll do a highlight. Get you in, tuck you in a little bit closer here. Do highlights with the Hauser light. And we'll pull that out and try to leave a couple of those ridgy kinds of rose type leaves. You just do it by moving the brush down as you shade it. Let the edge tuck over the edge. Do all my same sides. A little bit more detail. Leaf, and that gives it just a little bit more. And we'll take and do a little stem coming out as well. I'm just using the chisel of my brush. Just adds that little bit more, bring your eye into it. Then I'll finish up the razors on the rest of these leaves. Okay, we're going to go in with our burnt sienna, and we're going to add that little bit of kind of rust color to some of our leaves. That's going to bring that color around. Not super strong out to the outside, more keeping it strong to the inside. A little bit here and there out from the piece. Just carries us around. It's just a little squibble. I think let's glaze somebody down. We got all of our roses are the same. So I'm going to go into the traditional raw sienna and I'm going to bring this guy down back here. Just going to back him off just a little bit. increase my reds. We need to put something in the little throat thing. I think what I'll do is I'll get a little evergreen. And we'll poke a couple little evergreeny things in there. The tip of our brush. And then we'll go into the light green, and we'll put a couple of those in there too. Okay, and need to. I think our blues need to be brightened up, but I think let's grab our Filbert and our light buttermilk, whoops, and shove this off camera. A little bit of medium, a little bit, I'm going to go into the sapphire blue, and I'm going to mix it in with the light buttermilk, a lot of light buttermilk, just a tinted color. So here I have just made winter blue, so basically you could put a little bit of the light buttermilk with winter blue to lighten it up. Okay, so now we can go and make a little bit brighter, especially keeping around the center of interest area. And don't forget to put a couple of flower petals over the tops of our new leaves. Like some would be on top and some would not. You know, so let's make everybody muddle together. Now you know what's coming next, those of you who watch these videos a lot. Spattering. Spattering is going to be our friend, because that's going to marry all these colors together. Alright, so spattering, let's start with the blues. I'm going to spatter with sapphire. And I'm going to anchor my hand, and when you anchor your hand, and then I'm going to aim, oh, we're going to get out the Artist Betty. This makes it so you don't run your board through all of your spatters, and you've got to go directional with this kind of spattering. So I always tap on my palette, tap, 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 and then I anchor and aim it at the direction I want it to go. And I want it to spill out past where the body of the flowers goes. And now we'll go into the little bit lighter blue, which will end up looking like white, so be careful with this color. Definitely have to go in the light green. And tap, 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 tap. Strongly tap. Okay, now this is going to come off of leaves. And it makes everybody look a little magical. Try to keep this all on camera. Tricky. Okay, we'll probably have to have some yellow. I think we'll go true ochre. Instead of doing a highlight color for the yellow, I'm going to do like almost like a shade color for the yellow. That way it will tone down some of the things that and lead paths to our yellow roses. think we probably could use a little bit of the burnt sienna? Burnt sienna. Right there. Oops. Coming out of the throats. And raw, unbalanced. Okay. Now I just have to figure out what I'm doing down at the bottom. Okay, I feel like I still have a little bit of yellow polka dots going on, so I haven't bridged I'm jumping too many steps on my bridge. Okay, so I'm going to wash down a bit more. To give a little bit of dynamic, just some interest, some change in tone. Okay, and so we'll come over here. I want to shade the back side of this one. They're not too much exactly the same. Okay, so bring them down just a little bit. That gives them just a little bit sit down compared to this one. Then, I think we can bring up a layer of green. And so I'm going to go into my Hauser light green, and I'm going to make our leaves be more of a Hauser light green leaf. And brighten those leaves up. Keeping it more to one side, but this will bridge between here to here, okay, and brighten that. I can just wash it over the other side. We can leave a dark one up here. Okay, and then I think we can use a couple of whiter petals in these areas. And so this is just the light buttermilk and real strong, contrasty petally petals. And that starts bridging from, so see what I'm doing is I'm building a road to the other little rows. Okay, we'll do the same thing over here. Build our little roads. And run your arm through the little petals. Okay. Now on our flowers, on the blue flowers, I think it's safe to say that we could maybe float with the sapphire. I might have to wait until I'm dry. And maybe the dark. chose something not vibrant, and I think I'm going to have to go get the vibrant one out. I'm going to get an Ultra Blue Deep, and it is very, 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 very vibrant. And we're going to glaze. This is super electricity time. Let's see, do we like that? Not a big fan. I think I'm just going to wipe that back. Maybe we can just use the color we had. It's just more rusted. Just kind of glaze the flowers together. Maybe even glaze in a little bit of the blue into our leaf as our deep side. Just to help carry that. A little olive green. One more step of brightness on the leaves. Once again, we're making bridges. And we're eliminating this look of yellow polka dots. Now we have much better, whoops, we have a much better path that we can travel through the artwork. That will get us from point A to point B. Now I'm going to continue, I'm going to put a word. I've decided to change the orientation of this. Let's see if I can get you out more further. Okay, her rectangle pieces. Okay, I've decided to change the orientation. At first I thought it was going to be like this would be the top going down. Now it's going to be at the bottom, so I'm going to add a word up here. Okay, I've got my border painted and I'm going to see where I want my N. I think I want it to swirl into this border just a little bit. So I'm going to move my T-square up to figure out where my letters need to go. I think that's probably about right. Now make sure that my T-square is lined up. I'll give myself a line and trace my letters. One of the things about this Ghostwriter is it's got the white ceramic lead, which you saw me using earlier. It's got gray ceramic lead, and it's got a roller ball that rolls around on your surface, and it's got a padded grip so that when you are tracing your pattern, you don't get hand fatigue. It's brilliant. This is my, I think the padded grip is my favorite part. All the other stuff is just bonus. All right, we're going to take our paint, our brass paint, mixed with gloss varnish. You can do a little bit of water in with it to thin it, but then that's going to change your opacity. So I'll put a little bit more powder in there. I'm using the Easy Stroke Round because that's going to make the prettiest letters. It'll flatten real nice. Much better to use a round brush, a good round brush, only a good round brush. Well, and so what I mean when I say a good round brush is one that will make a flat on the end and base coat and do calligraphy and do real skinny and wide stuff. But that doesn't mean that a round that doesn't do that isn't good. It just means that it's not built to do lettering. Okay, so we're going to bring our lettering down. We're just going to go ahead and base coat it. I'll need to refill a lot because we don't get to thin it as much as we'd like to, because I really do need it solid. Okay, and then try to bring this up and over. You're going to practice doing pressure lifts when you do lettering. So you start out with heavy pressure and then start lifting up for a more graceful look. And then you can slide in on your chisel. So press and lift onto the chisel. Bit more water. Finding that balance. That's the tricky part. Come over the top a little heavier and slide into skinny. Okay, this will get fatter over here. Oops, I'm losing my medium. Gotta have enough paint on your brush. Okay, I'll bring this down off of here and nice graceful letters, huh? Just finish up the lettering. I'm going to use the micro eraser and I'm going to go around my lettering and get rid of any extra graphite lines. And we're going to spatter up in this area. Okay, I'm going to get my palette and spatter by adding water to my gold with the gloss varnish and finding my palette knife. And we're going to spatter up in this upper corner and down the sides and around the edge. Glaze just one more time with the burnt sienna. Just not everywhere, maybe even just a little bit on him. Just want that little bit of sunk down difference. Don't want to turn it too orange, but I just want it in. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Perfect. Maybe we'll sink these guys down over here. Alright, traversing from my notes down to here, my eye is carried here, but I really feel like I've got to be able to climb up my notes, up to my notes, I guess. So I'm going to turn this puppy over. Okay, see if I can get you all on camera. And we're going to bring in a little bit of vine. See if we like that, and then we'll bring off little no, not like that. Little shoots for our little climbing little vine, and then we'll go into our lighter green, and we'll just spotty here and there climb up, just barely touching down on that, and it's within. Go there. Now we're going to need to carry the eye over yonder, so we'll do that too, but I get our perfectly wonderful little Filbert brush, and we're going to do a little bit of avocado and Hauser light green, and we're going to make little threesomes of leaves climbing up. Some over here. Now we've got to make a couple of these little leafy poos come out here and be brighter. Lead our eye over yonder. And then maybe we can take and put a couple of little itty bitty yellow buds. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple of little yellow buds that are going to be, I think my brush is going to be way too big. It's way too wet, that's for certain. The moon yellow on the toe. Yeah, I think I can just touch this down, actually. If I had my colors meeting in the middle. Moon yellow, and it's traditional raw sienna. So I'm just going to touch that down here and there, and have a little riot going on right here. This one can be kind of almost a little open guy. Add a couple more here and there. We want to keep them muted, but we want to definitely bring that color up. We can add the calyxes, calyxes. A little bit. Not too detailed. The more detailed you make it, the more your eye goes there. And so we want our eye to go there, but we don't want our eye to jump and scream and race there. Perfect. And one more thing that's bugging me is I have got an awful lot of messy spattering that I like, but I don't want so much of it in the middle of my board. I'm going to pick up my big Filbert brush from earlier and some black paint. I'm going to blot it. I'm just going to come out here and slip slap, not trying to hide anything, just trying to mute some stuff down in the middle. By doing big slip slap, that means I'm not going to have a delineated line. Yeah, that's better.